What's the future going to look like? And more importantly, how do you build for a future that you don't quite understand? Welcome back to Listen to Leo. In today's video, I wanted to just open up the discussion about what it means to build for the future. And not only build for the future, but also market to the future. Now, bear with me. That sounds like a little bit of a weird thought, but it's something that I use to describe the way that I like to think about ultimately marketing my products, because the way I view it is there's three different time frames that you can market to, and they come into play in different ways. So, for example, let's say you're marketing to the past. This means that the people who are going to be using your product are not the ones, most likely, who are the ones in charge of buying your product. Instead, what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell it to people who used to be in the role that the people using your product are in right now. This is something that I see primarily evidenced in selling in education, specifically in the US. But a lot of times what happens is if you want to sell something to teachers, teachers don't actually have any buying power, right? Instead, you're going to have to market to some sort of administration in charge of making purchasing decisions. Now, depending on the school district and all sorts of things, the teachers who are currently teaching may or may not have any say in what products they buy. So, in talking to the administration, you're probably talking to former teachers. And you have to think about when they were teaching and what it was like then, because even though they might have some idea of what it's like to teach now, they don't have hands-on experience. Now, let's contrast that to marketing to the present. This is where you've got a lot of alignment between the people buying your product and the people using your product. And this is a lot easier typically because, the person who you're trying to solve the problem for is actually the one who's buying your product, which that level of alignment is nice because it kind of just makes things nice and easy. And because it's easy, a lot of times you're going to have more competition. This is, I think, where most of the competition will be. There might be quite a bit in the marketing to the past as well. It's a little harder, and so typically you'll see an advantage to people who have been around a while. They'll be able to understand the shifts that have happened in that industry within kind of the two time frames of teachers versus administration, for example. But what I don't think people think enough about is marketing to the future. And this is something I really like to focus on because I look to market to people who aren't in that role yet, but will be. So they are aspiring to that role. And so this is actually very much like a blue ocean strategy in terms of marketing, because typically there's not a lot of competition. And there's not a lot of competition because it takes a long time to pay off. Depending on how far into the future you're trying to market, probably the most competition you're going to find is in like the course space, who are, they're trying to sell the transformation of going from point A to point B. They're trying to get people into that role. And there's something to be said for that. But I think one of the things you can do, especially if you can afford it early on, is getting your product in the hands of people who can't pay to use it yet, but will hopefully be in a position to use it down the line. Putting it into the hands of students, for example. Students are not a very valuable audience in terms of what they have to spend, but if they're going to be in your target market when they graduate, when they get a job, and they're going to be able to come in with experience that's going to help them get to a level of skill faster than they would have without your tool, then this becomes a very, very valuable piece of the puzzle. And so when I'm building, this is what I'm building for. I'm trying to figure out what I can build now that will help people get to various levels in the future faster than what is currently possible. And I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of what do we need for the creator economy, for example, to help creators get up to speed faster, to get to monetization faster, while still being able to provide extreme levels of value for their audience. What can we do for creators starting out to be able to become skilled faster? Or, kind of on the flip side of that, what can we do to help them not waste time building up skills that aren't going to be particularly useful in the future? And that brings us to how we think about the future and what it's going to look like. So typically, I see this pattern happening kind of over and over again online. Basically, a group of people is early into a platform or a strategy or something like that. They become very successful, and then the copycats start. And so people see what worked and they try to copy that. And then there becomes a flood of duplicated content, and you get patterns like Thread Boys and these AI newsletters that proliferate because people are following patterns. And so the more successful this pattern has been, the more people duplicate it, and the less valuable that pattern becomes. And so when I'm looking at the future, first of all, I say, okay, what are more and more people doing now? Because here soon, the most successful people are not going to be doing that. They're going to be doing something else. And I think the biggest example of this right now is email newsletters. And I have an email newsletter. It's called The Internet Factory, because one of my beliefs for the future is that everybody needs to build their own internet moving forward. But what happens is that there becomes more and more email newsletters, and you get these recommendation systems like Substack, or Beehive has one, ConvertKit has one. And they say, oh, you're signing up for this newsletter, you'll probably like these others. And then they'll sell things for subscribers to where, like, hey, if you get me this many subscribers, I'll pay out for that. But I had someone subscribe to me lately who had, on Substack, who was also subscribed to 750 other newsletters. Way to make me feel special. But I just don't think that type of level is sustainable for either the creators or the consumers, because the consumers are going to end up subscribed to so many newsletters, they get overwhelmed and they stop reading any of them. Newsletter writers are going to see less and less value out of their subscriber counts, leading to needing to inflate counts more and more and more to have any level of value. And so when I'm looking to build, I'm saying, what's next? And that's why I'm exploring kind of the chatbot space and curating content, using that as a basis for sharing my knowledge at a wider scale. It's a similar idea to a newsletter, but I'm not crowding someone's inbox. The friction is higher because I need to bring people to a site, but hopefully by the time I get them there, they already trust me, and then they can get access to the knowledge and content that I've curated easily and when they need to. And when they don't, they can leave. And so that's the approach I'm taking to build products that are going to be useful in the future. It means it's going to be harder now. I've got to convince people that they're going to need to do this, even if they don't necessarily see the need for it now. That part's not easy. But when I can start showing people success faster than comparable people building newsletters and trying to build up traditional social media audiences, that's when the people who want to be there in the future start migrating over in waves, and the cycle begins anew. All right, that's it. I'd love to hear from you. What are you thinking about the future? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.